You're listening to The Alex Jones Show.
Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
Welcome to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host today, although Alex is going to be joining us right after the news, and we have a lot of news. If Charlie Sheen was here, he would say winning, because we're winning across the board. Of course, we already knew that Hillary Clinton was a liar. She proved that yesterday. She got caught in the lie just before she went to the United Nations Security Council and talked about how she was using her private email server in her home out of convenience and how she was using it to email Bill Clinton. The Clinton spokesman had said just a couple of hours before that Bill Clinton did 2 emails his entire life and specifically said when those 2 emails were. So she got caught in her lie. The ATF got caught in a power grab. That's a big win. The Second Amendment activists have forced the ATF to shelve the Obama ammo ban. 80,000 Americans bombard government with complaints. This is a story up on Infowars.com. We also have a big victory in the health fronts. Of course, we learned last week that McDonald's said they were going to back off and no longer do antibiotics in chicken, and that has huge ramifications because the reason that they give antibiotics so much to chickens is because of the way that they're raised. You're not going to be able to raise the chickens under these kind of horrible factory conditions. And I say horrible not only for the chickens, but for the people who eat the chickens. You're not going to be able to raise the chickens in those kind of conditions if you don't pump them up with antibiotics. They have modified them genetically or through selective breeding to have incredibly large breasts, to grow very rapidly. They can't even stand on their own, so they're laying down on the ground. But it's not just the ground. It's a deep level of waste and excrement from the previous generation of chickens. And so they get these infections. It rubs the feathers off of them. They get infections. That's why they pump them up with antibiotics. But now, this week, we have a story up on Infowars.com. McDonald's is talking about putting kale into their stores. McHale. What are they going to do with this? Are they going to put it in salads? Are they going to make it into smoothies? Who knows? It's going to be very difficult for McDonald's to do this type of thing. The reason that these fast food companies have been loading up their products with things that are used to make rubber mats, for example, or just chemicals that are preservatives, the reason they do that is to give them longer shelf life, to make the logistics easier. It's very difficult to handle fresh produce. You have a lot of loss with that. That's why it's so expensive to buy it in the grocery store. That's why it's so cheap to go eat at McDonald's. That's why poor people are so obese, is because they feel like they can't afford, in many cases, to eat fresh vegetables, let alone organic vegetables. So it's going to be a real challenge for McDonald's, but it's a victory because they're not doing this, as the New York Times pointed out, because people's tastes have changed. They're doing it because people have been educated. They understand what the health implications of this are. And so that's why they're changing. That's why when they announced that they were going to restructure their menu, the first thing they said was going to remove antibiotics. There's no taste to the antibiotics. It's because of people's health concerns that they're doing that. Another huge victory, again, in fluoridation. This one, a story from Newsweek. We just had a story last week from the Telegraph in the UK talking about how they had looked at the health effects on the thyroid in the UK, looking at areas where there was no fluoridation or where there was light fluoridation versus areas where there was heavy fluoridation. And they could see a distinct problem coming on with the thyroid, making people obese, making them depressed. And of course, there's been other studies pointing to brain damage. Now this new study that has been done in the United States is showing that there is a correlation to fluoridation and much higher ADHD rates, much, much higher. They even go through, and we'll talk about this after the break in detail, they even go through and quantize this in a model saying if you add 1% fluoridation, every 1% increase rather in the portion of the U.S. population drinking fluoride is going to correspond to 67,000 cases of ADHD 11 years later, and it continued to increase as they took the time frame out to 131 cases by 2011. So we're going to talk about that in detail, and we're going to talk about, even though we're winning, we still have to continue to fight. New York wants to start paying people to snitch on idling motors. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
The government's Department of Homeland Security is buying up loads of ammo. At the same time, they're restricting civilians' rights to own and purchase firearms. Can you put two and two together? Infidel Body Armor can stop every round, including hollow points and .308 sniper rounds, is reasonably priced and fully legal. But for how long? Go to InfidelBodyArmor.com, spelled INFIDEL bodyarmor.com. Infidel Body Armor just won't quit.
When cells become toxic, they die early and aging sets in. No one has put together a formula that focuses directly on brain health, nerve growth factors, and optimizing your cellular energy at the same time. Just one of the key compounds, BioPQQ, is backed by major clinical studies. You want the best that's out there at the lowest price anywhere? We now have the synergistic solution. Secure your DNA force today at InfoWarsLife.com or call toll-free 888-253-3139. Alex Jones here. For the last 2 years, I've been working with top doctors, nutritionists, and chemists to design a nutraceutical formulation that has truly life-changing health benefits. So many other formulations out there contain toxic ingredients, synthetic additives, and even GMOs. Introducing the all-new Ancient Defense Herbal Immunity Blend, crafted with over 14 key ancient herbs and extracts to supercharge and prepare your body for what experts admit is the most dangerous season of the year. We have rejected hundreds of other formulations in our quest to bring you what is simply the most powerful and comprehensive proprietary formula that we have ever created in the realm of herbal immunity. Experience the benefits of combining over 14 ancient herbs and extracts with exciting new advances in nutraceutical science. Now is the time to secure Ancient Defense for you and your family. Visit InfoWarsLife.com or call 1-888-253-3139. That's InfoWarsLife.com. Used since before the days of the Roman Empire to support the body's natural systems and enhance overall health. Introducing the new InfoWarsLife.com Oil of Oregano formulation, a highly advanced nutraceutical form of this key herb that has been traditionally used by civilizations for thousands of years to promote health. We have now procured the most high quality and potent forms of oregano oil on the market, sourced from top leading manufacturers to ensure a concentrated level of bioactive ingredients. Extracted directly from the wild herb and sealed in easy-to-use capsules, you will no longer need to endure the burning of liquid oregano on the tongue. Wild crafted from the Mediterranean oregano species that experts agree is one of the most powerful and most challenging to acquire. This winter season, it's more important than ever to secure this true form of oil of oregano. Now available in our limited first run at InfoWarsLife.com. That's InfoWarsLife.com or call 888-253-3139.
From his Central Texas Command Center, deep behind enemy lines, the information war continues. It's Alex Jones and the GCN Radio Network.
Welcome to the Alex Jones Show. I am David Knight on this Wednesday, March 11th, 2015. I'll be hosting the show, but Alex Jones is going to be joining us in just a few minutes after the news. In this segment, we're also going to play a report from Rob Dew that ran last night on the Nightly News, talking about how aborted fetuses are being used as a commodity. Let me explain to you that we all see children as human resources of some type. We can respect them as persons, or we can use them as commodities. Rob Dew did this story last night, and then today we saw this story about Iran. They're going to ban vasectomies. They're going to curb abortion and contraceptives because they want more people. They want to get their population from 77 million to 200 million. But of course, we have governments in the West and corporations in the West who see children as a different kind of resource. They want to harvest aborted feces organs and use them commercially. So that's the report we're going to have from Rob Dew in just a couple of minutes. But first, this breaking news. Of course, we had a major victory yesterday. We've had several victories. I was just talking about that in the last segment. We have beaten back the ATF for now. They wanted to begin a framework that was going to ban all ammunition. piece by piece. But they've been turned back for right now. We've got an article up on Infowars.com. Second Amendment activists forced the ATF to shelve Obama ammo ban. 80,000 Americans bombard the government with complaints. They said, surprisingly, this is what the ATF said, most viewed the proposed regulation negatively. Yeah, that's an understatement. They said the vast majority of comments received to date are critical of the framework. And so this deserves further study. The ATF accordingly will not at this time seek to issue a final framework. Let me explain to you what their framework is. What they're calling a framework is merely the idea that they've come up with a rationale for banning ammunition. And just like playing the game of hangman, they're going to add one piece at a time until they have completely destroyed your God-given rights, respected by the Constitution, that the government agents have to swear to uphold to become government agents. That's what they appeal to for their authority, and they want to destroy that. They ignore it, and they want to remove it because that removes their obvious criminal liability. But that's what the Second Amendment said would happen. They said it would be a gradual process of infringement, putting one piece in at a time, just like you're playing the game of hangman. They said, of course, they're going to go back and they're going to look at this again. There's going to be additional open and transparent processes. Yeah, right. Okay. Well, at least they were more transparent and more responsive than the FCC, who came out and said, we're going to take over the internet. We're not going to tell you how we're going to do it. We're only going to tell you why. It's to protect net neutrality. We're going to fix the internet because, the internet is broken. No, it's not. And they still haven't, after a week, shown us what the proposed regulations were going to be. The FCC is starting to control the internet, and they're worse than the ATF already, who's been going after the Second Amendment. They pass regulation. They don't let anybody look at it, including our elected representatives. And then they have this regulation passed for over a week, and we still haven't seen it. Not the public, not our elected representatives. Gun Owners of America had this comment. They said, these regulations have been put out for public comment up until March the 16th for the ATF. Now they have backed that down 5 days early. That is a major victory. And not only were there 80,000 people sending a comment to them, but they also got comments from over 200 congressmen. There you go. But they say that they tried to make a good faith interpretation of the law. This is what the ATF said. We tried to make a good faith interpretation of the law, and of course this deserves further study. No, it doesn't. But they're going to come back. But we beat them this time, and we can beat them again. And I think one of the things we need to do is go on the offense against these empire-building bureaucracies that never stop. And the ATF is one example of many examples of that. Now, we're not going to have time to get in this before we play Rob's report, but there's another victory today, this one on water fluoridation. The studies are coming out almost on a weekly basis. It was just on February the 23rd that we saw a study from the British paper, The Telegraph, looking at the effects on the thyroid in Britain in areas where there was heavy fluoridation versus areas where there was light fluoridation, where there was no fluoridation. Because fortunately for the British, they have a lot of areas where there is no fluoridation. In America, it's simply a question of how much fluoride are they dumping in the water based on different areas. And so what they did was they did a study here in the United States. This is a study that's been published in the journal Environmental Health that found that states with higher portion of artificially fluoridated water had a higher prevalence of ADHD. They said this relationship held up across 6 different years that they looked at. To sum it up, they said states in which a greater proportion of people received artificially fluoridated water in 1992 tended to have a greater proportion of children and adolescents who received ADHD diagnoses after controlling for socioeconomic status. In other words, they looked at Delaware, for example, and Iowa. Both states have relatively low poverty rates, but they have heavily fluoridated water and have heavy levels of ADHD. Now, they even quantized this with a model. The scientists produced a predictive model that calculated that every 1% increase in the portion of the U.S. population drinking fluoridated water in 1992 was associated with 67,000 additional cases of ADHD 11 years later, and an additional 131 cases by 2011 after controlling for socioeconomic status. In other words, about 20 years later. So they even quantized it. But we'll come back to this later on in the broadcast, and I want to get your comments on this. But let's go to this report from Rob Dew about how some corporations view human resources of children.